Welcome to DRM News Global. Today we're diving into, frankly, what could be a huge shift in the global economy, and that's these new tariffs that President Trump's put in place.
Oh, yeah.
We've got some really, really compelling warnings, I think you'd say, from some big names, people like billionaire investor Bill Ackman, for instance, and the chairman over at J.P. Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon, alongside, of course, all the latest news on these policy changes.
Right.
Really, our goal here at DRN News Global is to kind of cut through all that noise and figure out, okay, what's the potential impact of these tariffs? What are the arguments for and against them? We've got these heavy hitters weighing in. And then what does all this mean for you, our listener, and for the stability of this global economy we're all a part of?
Right from the start, I think what's fascinating is just how much concern there is from these really, really experienced people in the financial world. I mean, this isn't just your typical back and forth political debate. This is, some of the most influential people in business basically saying, hey, wait a minute, this path we're on, this is a little worrying.
Totally. Yeah, definitely attention grabbing. So let's jump right in with Bill Ackman. Just so everyone's on the same page, he's like a major player in the investment world. I mean, we're talking billionaire hedge fund manager, right? And what's really interesting here is that he's actually been a pretty vocal supporter of President Trump in the past.
Okay, yeah.
So when this guy starts raising serious concerns, it's like, whoa, hold on, something big might be happening. And his latest warning, it's pretty stark. He says, America is heading toward a self-inflicted, get this, economic nuclear winter because of these new tariffs.
Economic nuclear winter. That's quite the image.
Right. So let's try to understand this reaction. I mean, this is coming from someone who, as we said, was actually on board with the president's agenda before.
Yeah.
What's at the heart of this, super strong reaction?
Well, think about it. It's not just about tariffs on a few specific things. I mean, that's kind of the usual way this works. Ackman's really focused on just how big these tariffs are and how widespread they are. He keeps saying massive and disproportionate rate, and they're hitting everybody. Not just our usual rivals, but even our allies are getting caught up in this. And I think that's what's really worrying him.
Yeah.
It's like the U.S., for a long time now, we've been seen as like the steady, dependable partner in the global economy. But when you start throwing these huge tariffs around so suddenly, well, it just makes people nervous. It's like, wait, can we still trust these guys? That's a problem for investment, And when investment dries up, well, that's not good for any of us.
It's like you're shaking the whole system, right? Okay, so let's get into the weeds a bit. What are we actually talking about here? Well, for starters, there's a new 10% tax on pretty much everything coming into the U.S. from overseas. Like everything. 180 plus countries affected by this.
Wow.
Then you got even bigger tariffs, even more extreme ones, on goods coming from China. Specifically, we're talking a whopping 54% total increase since just January. And of course, China isn't taking this lying down. They've hit back with their own tariffs, a 34% levy on all U.S. goods. So it's a rapid escalation, for sure. It's happening fast, it's happening on multiple fronts, and it's, like, really big.
Yeah. And you have to think, what about the immediate impact on people, right?
Totally.
I mean, Ackman's point about how this is going to hit low-income consumers the hardest, I think that really resonates, especially coming from him. Remember, this is a guy who supported Trump before, but he's basically saying, hey, this policy, this is going to hurt the people who voted for him the most. And that statement, this is not what we voted for, I think that's huge.
It definitely carries some weight coming from him, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, to his credit, he's not just pointing fingers. He's actually proposing a solution, too, which is a 90-day timeout. He's like, let's pause these tariffs for 3 months.
A cooling off period.
Exactly, a cooling off period. Use that time to negotiate, right, and figure out some fairer deals. He even argues, and I think this is fascinating, that if we do this, if we show some stability, it could actually attract trillions of dollars in new investments.
Yeah. If people feel confident, if they feel like things are predictable, they're more likely to invest. And that's what we need, right? Investment drives the economy.
Exactly. It's the fuel.
So this timeout idea, I think it really gets at the heart of the problem. This whole thing feels rushed, too sudden, It's like we're just throwing these tariffs around without thinking about the consequences. And those consequences, well, they could be really bad for everyone, not just us.
And if we don't take this time out, if we just keep barreling down this path, Ackman's got some pretty scary predictions. He says, get this, business investment. It'll grind to a halt. People are going to be so uncertain about the future that they're just going to sit on their money, not invest, not take risks. And then consumers, people like you and me, are going to start tightening our belts, spending less.
Right.
It's that fear factor, right?
Right.
And then there's the whole issue of America's reputation. We've always been seen as like this reliable, dependable partner in the world. But if we just keep throwing these tariffs around, it's like, are these guys serious? Can we trust them anymore? That could take a long time to repair.
Absolutely. It takes a lot of work to build trust, and it can be destroyed really, really quickly.
And Ackman even worries that CEOs and boards won't be willing to commit to anything long term. I mean, who wants to make a big investment when it feels like we're on the brink of, as he puts it, an economic nuclear war?
Yeah, that's a great point. Businesses need to be able to plan for the future. If it's just constant chaos, constant uncertainty, they're not going to invest. They're not going to hire. And that's how you get a recession, right?
Exactly. And speaking of the markets, I mean, we're already seeing this anxiety playing out. Ackman
Yeah.
mentioned the recent plunges. And yeah, the numbers are pretty grim. U.S. equities, basically the value of companies listed on the stock market, had their worst week in a long time, down over 9%. That's not good.
No, not at all. And the market, it often reacts before the rest of us feel the effects. It's like an early warning system.
A canary in the coal mine.
Exactly. So when you see drops like that, it means investors are worried, they're not confident about the future, and that usually means trouble for everyone.
Yeah. And then there's the practical issue of prices, right? What are we all going to be paying for things at the grocery store, for our clothes, our cars? Ackman makes a really interesting point. He says even companies that aren't carrying a ton of debt, they're going to have a hard time swallowing these huge cost increases from the tariffs.
Yeah.
And that means what?
Higher prices for you and me.
Exactly.
I mean, think about it. These tariffs are basically a tax on imported goods. Companies are going to try to absorb some of that cost, sure, but eventually it's going to get passed on to us, the consumers.
Yeah, it's like a ripple effect. And a lot of companies already have a ton of debt.
Mm.
So adding these tariffs on top of that, it's like adding fuel to the fire.
Right. It just makes a bad situation even worse.
Okay, so we've got Ackman sounding the alarm, but he's not alone. Jamie Dimon, the chairman of J.P. Morgan Chase, which is like one of the biggest financial institutions in the world, he's also expressing serious concerns.
Yeah, he's basically echoing a lot of what Ackman's saying, especially about how these tariffs are going to hurt everyday Americans, especially those who are already struggling.
And J.P. Morgan Chase, they've actually put some numbers to this, right? They've significantly increased their forecast for a U.S. and global recession. They went from 40% to 60% chance by the end of the year. That's a big jump.
It is. And what that means is, well, it means things could get really bad. We're talking job losses, less investment, a lot more uncertainty about your own financial future. A recession, it's not just numbers on a page. It affects everyone.
Yeah, and Dimon really laid it out in a letter to the company's shareholders. He said, these tariffs, they're likely to increase inflation. And that's making a lot of people think, okay, a recession, that's actually looking more and more likely. And then he said something that really stuck with me. The quicker this issue is resolved, the better, because some of the negative effects increase cumulatively over time and would be hard to reverse. Like, it's pretty heavy.
It is. It's like once the damage is done, it's hard to undo it. And things can spiral pretty quickly. One thing leads to another, and suddenly you're in a really bad situation.
Yeah, it's a domino effect. So we've got these huge figures in finance sounding the alarm. But what about the other side of the story? What's the view from the White House? Well, President Trump. He's defending these new import taxes. He even said, and I quote, "Sometimes you have to take medicine to fix something." He believes this will ultimately be good for the country. More jobs, more investment.
It's that short-term pain for long-term gain argument, right? Like, yeah, things might be tough now, but in the end, we'll be better off. It's a gamble.
Exactly. And he even said while on his presidential plane that Europe and Asia are dying to make a deal, implying, that he's got all the cards here, that this is all part of his grand plan to get better deals for America.
It's a bold strategy for sure. But, based on the market reaction and the fact that other countries are hitting back with their own tariffs, it doesn't seem like they're just going to roll over. This is more complicated than that.
Yeah, and the markets, they've spoken pretty clearly, haven't they? I mean, right after Trump announced these tariffs, share prices in Europe and Asia, they plummeted. And remember those U.S. equities we talked about earlier, still heading downwards. And those futures markets, which are essentially bets on where the market's going next, they're down too. It's like the whole world is saying, uh-oh, this doesn't look good.
Exactly. It's a global response, and it shows just how connected we all are. What happens in the U.S. doesn't stay in the U.S. It affects everyone.
Now, there's another little wrinkle in all of this. Bill Ackman, remember him, he's actually
Mhm.
criticized Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, suggesting there might be a conflict of interest. Apparently, Lutnick's firm could actually benefit from economic instability.
So that raises the question, right? Whose interests are really being served here? It's a reminder that there are always different perspectives, different motivations at play.
Yeah, and it makes you think, okay, who's really benefiting from all this? But even with all the criticism and the market turmoil, Lutnick's come out and said that the Trump administration is sticking to its guns. They're not backing down from these tariffs.
That's a pretty clear message. They believe in the strategy, and they're willing to weather the storm, so to speak. But, it's a high-stakes gamble.
It is. And, it's important to remember something Ackman said. He actually agrees with Trump that the global trade system has been unfair to the U.S. He's fully on board with fixing that. But the problem, he says, is the method. These tariffs are too big, too widespread, too sudden.
That's a key distinction. It's not about whether there's a problem, it's about how you fix it. And Ackman saying, hey, this approach, this is way too risky. There's a good chance this is going to do more harm than good.
Okay, so let's try to wrap all this up. It's a pretty complex situation, but here's the bottom line for you. We've got this really interesting tension playing out. You've got super successful billionaire investor who used to support President Trump, and now he's basically saying, whoa, hold on, this is a huge mistake.
Right.
He's predicting a potential economic nuclear winter, a recession,
Yeah.
widespread damage. And then you've got President Trump, who's just as convinced that he's right, that this is the tough medicine we need.
And for you, the listener, what it comes down to is this. Prices could go up, the economy could slow down, maybe even go into recession, and America's reputation in the world could take a hit.
And this isn't some abstract economic theory we're talking about. This is your life, It's your household budget, your job, your community. These policies, they have the potential to really change things for you in a very real way.
So the big question is, what are you going to be watching for? How are you going to know if things are going well or badly? Are you seeing prices going up at the store? Are businesses in your area starting to get nervous? Those are the real-world indicators you need to pay attention to.
Absolutely. So as this whole thing unfolds, and remember, the White House is showing no signs of backing down, here's something to think about. What are the most important signs you're going to be looking for to figure out what the real impact of these tariffs is? Is it inflation? Is it the job market? Is it the stock market? Keep a close eye on those things, and you'll have a much better sense of where we're headed. Thanks for joining us for this pretty intense discussion here on DRM News Global.